Good day and welcome to this edition of our Sunday afternoon magazine program Press Hour. And today we'll be talking about the youths. They had a whole week, others say 11 days to, or 10 days to carry out activities here and there. The Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education was at the forefront of it all, with the young people of this country trying as much as they can to be able to make themselves come to the forefront. And this is the moment when we celebrate the young people of Cameroon. So they are here. They will be talking to us about what they think about today's Cameroon and what they think about today's world, given that the opportunities are so many, much more than we had in our time when we didn't have what they have today. And so we'll talk about that and also talk about decentralization. The Ministry of Decentralization and Local Development was in the news also. They had a two-day conference, the first of its kind, to build capacity and project into the future. We have a number of municipal authorities with us in the course of this program. But let's begin with what the papers were feeding on. Our press review, then when I come back, I'll tell you who these youths are.
It's another week with the Press on Press Hour. Pride of place goes to the youth. The 53rd National Youth Day, the state bilingual daily Cameroon Tribune reported, is showcasing the opportunities youth can grab. Agriculture, ICT and projects initiated by government to help youth become autonomous were presented to the youth in Babaju by Minister Mununa Futsu as he launched Youth Day activities in the West region. Youth Day activities, the Guardian Post reported, were gathering steam in the East region. The paper said a series of activities to celebrate the youth were ongoing in that part of the country. On the columns of the Guardian Post too, the stakes and challenges of the first ever General Conference of Local Councils that opened in Yaoundé could also be read. The English Language Weekly reported that local development actors for 2 days brainstormed on how to give a facelift to local and city councils. The Guardian Post quotes Minister Georges Elangaubam as saying decentralization must be given a new impetus through a citizen participation approach. More powers to councils, according to Cameroon Tribune, will imply giving councils the means to be at the center of local development, a move which will certainly take decentralization and local governance to a higher gear. The Prime Minister Joseph Dion Ngute told the over 600 participants as he chaired the first ever conference of local councils. Cameroon Tribune reports. Jean de Dieu Momo was the man of the week. His infamous outing on the program Actualités Hebdo on CRTV sparked discordant voices according to the media. The weekly, the Guardian Post, said Minister Momo's remarks on CRTV sparked diplomatic row. The paper, like the Horizon, opinionated that using Nazi Germany to justify government clampdown on CRM protesters was received by Israel as justification for the Holocaust. Anti-Semitic utterances from Momo, which the weekly, the Guardian Post, further reported, has seen mounting pressure on Biya to flush out Jean de Dieu Momo from government. Momo is still in government, but the Voice newspaper and other tabloids reported that government has disowned Minister Momo. According to the papers, the Minister of Communication has deplored the comments of the Deputy Minister of Justice and has apologized to Israel. Away from the tragic hero to the troubled Northwest and Southwest, where separatists split over 11-day lockdown. According to the bi-weekly The Horizon, Bo Herbert, spokesperson of Morisque, warned that Ambazonia could be littered with corpses due to the lockdown. A prediction that is surely coming to pass, as the Guardian Post reported that the lockdown in the Northwest and Southwest turned bloody. The English Language Weekly said at least 30 people were killed in Bole Bakundu, Kumbo, Ndu, Nwa, Boya and other localities. A soldier was beheaded in Boya. Cars were set ablaze. Homes and shops were looted. Horror scenes that The Voice, The Guardian Post, and The Horizon went further to describe. The Voice said the ruthless killing of children and women is a shameful episode in Anglophone Cameroon. For the tabloid, some villages of the war-torn northwest and southwest are not safe for children and women. In their homes, like in the bushes, they are hunted and killed. In whom soldiers killed a man, wife, and 3-month-old child, The Voice reported. A scenario The Horizon corroborated, with The Guardian Post headlining on the case of Cynthia Egri, a widow who was taking the corpse of the husband home for burial but met her doom on the Bamenda-Batibo highway. She was shot and killed alongside her son and in-law during a confrontation between Ambazonia fighters and soldiers at a checkpoint mounted by Ambazonia fighters. Is the crisis having a toll on the image of Cameroon? As the Guardian Post reported that U.S. military aid to Cameroon could be cut off as alleged gross human rights violations in the northwest and southwest regions are a call for concern. While The Horizon thinks the arrest and detention of Patrice Ngenang by regime zealots has instead made him a hero. The paper says the U.S. Congress continues to flay the government of Cameroon over his detention and the Anglophone crisis. The crisis, too, has made things bad for women in the northwest and southwest. Women have learned to dig graves and bury their dead. Such has been the case in Bafut, as reported by the Guardian Post. And this was the week in the papers on Press Hour. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Beatrice. Let me begin with you, Franklin. Good day.
Good day.
And welcome to Press Hour. I will not introduce you as such. As I go on, you're a student at the University of Yaoundé too, right?
That's right.
Okay. How do you see youth today?
Youth today remain a very vibrant part of the society, but faced with a lot of challenges. They are still to an extent feeling some degree of marginalization upon them. Given that there are challenges, they are of the opinion that there are challenges is not being given total attention, or better still, their challenges is just being talked upon by the authorities in place, but they are doing very little to solve that equation of the challenges they are facing. We know among the challenges, of course.
No, you have said what you think about the youth today. Okay. We'll come to that shortly. Tatiana Adamu, you are a youth activist. How do you see youth today?
Okay, I would say that youths, especially we talk about the Cameroonian context. As a youth in Cameroon, I would say that, as Frank said, there is a certain extent of marginalization that is in place. And I think that even though we're seeing that youths are the hope of tomorrow, youths we rely on youths for Cameroon to be a better Cameroon tomorrow, but yet we are not giving enough attention to youths. If we say that we have to participate in the construction of a country, then we should be given a certain amount of responsibility. We expect every time, but we are always disappointed because we always think that we will be given more to do, we will be given opportunities to show our potentials, but we are always left to ourselves, and we are encouraged to do things for ourselves, to help ourselves, but there's a certain level of assistance that we need, both materially and even social wise. So okay. I think that there's much to be done in that sense.
All right. Diane, how do you see the youth today?
As we all know, youth constitute about 70% of the population in Cameroon, but yet they have little or no say in decision making in the country, because at times things that concerns youth is being taken, the decision that concerns youth is being taken by other people. So there is really a lot to do as far as the youth are concerned, because
Okay. Simply put, youths are not taken into consideration. Yeah. Okay. Stephen, you are out of that age group already. When you hear them speak, they are almost unanimous that that age group, they are not given what they are due, they have marginalized, they are not taken care of, they are out of the decision-making circles. What's your reaction to what all the three of them have said?
I think I should hasten to say that from what I gather from what they are saying, is that the youths in Cameroon have lost hope in the future. They have no hope for the future. The authorities that be are not encouraging them, are not giving them their due. And they are asking that, this is what they are saying is a kind of clarion call on the authorities to think about them. They feel forgotten, they feel hopeless.
Now, when you hear that's what they think, yes. Is that what you observe? I may want to share the opinion, because when I imagine part of it or all of it.
Let me come. When I imagine that if you look at the structure of our society today, those who are governing Cameroon form less than 10% of the age population of Cameroon. That's to say the octogenarians and septuagenarians who are ruling Cameroon today, who have crowded all the governing segments of the country, belong to the aging population. The youths are virtually forgotten.
Now, when you say what you say, yeah. Is there a place in the world where everything has been given to youth because they constitute a majority of the population?
What I'm trying to say is that there should be alternation, there should be succession. The youth, when he's growing, should see that at a certain point, at 50, I should have been this. But when you create a situation whereby somebody who is due retirement, who is 60, who is supposed to go on retirement, is still there. Somebody who is 70, 80 is still there. A youth who is still in school doesn't see any reason to rush. Doesn't see any reason to work hard, to take over the position of that person who is there.
It makes your observations, are you talking here, because when you make the observations you make, it's like there is an age group that is supposed to be packed out of the society.
Yeah.
But from what I gather, elsewhere in the world, each age group is useful because it's the sociological composition of the society as it is.
That is very true. By the way, it should be structured. For instance, let's take the biggest employer in Cameroon is the civil service. So I want to dwell on the civil service. Look at the civil service today. Even the Prime Minister called on ministers to make sure every person in their ministry who is due retirement should go on retirement.
Okay, I'll come back to you. It means that
even the government recognizes the fact that there are people who are supposed to be out of their seats, they are still tightened.
If you look at, from what you're saying, the state cannot, or Cameroon as a state cannot develop through the public service. Are we agreed?
That is true.
And so, instead, I was thinking that you talk about government creating the enabling environment so the private sector can thrive.
That's another point. I was talking in the situation that is not what should be.
Okay, so everybody crowding into the public service.
Public service. It's the government that has created that situation. It is the government that has created that situation.
Okay.
Instead of the government creating the enabling environment for the private sector, for the informal sector to blossom.
No, the private sector, not informal. The government keeps
launching concours, from one police concours to gendarme concours to... The government should give graduates loans, create an environment where the graduates should be able to come up with business projects and then give them loans to...
All right, we'll come back to that. Is your ambition working with the state? You are doing economics.
Yes, sir.
Is that your ambition, to work with the state?
That is only on a second plan, but on a very first plan, because given that I'm an economic student, I've got to learn a lot how
to create wealth.
Yes. So we are more interested in setting up our own structures tomorrow rather than compiling files to go and integrate ourselves into the public service. But now that dream seems to be dying down in so many youth. Why? As you earlier said, the environment as at now, the terrain as at now is not very suitable for youth to embark and play the game. No. The climate, the enabling environment, the support from the state. You know, the state, there is this slogan that don't ask, or better say, don't only expect to be integrated into the public service, but try to do something on your own. it does not only suffice to say we should do something on our own. When you say we should do things, we should try to be creative, then make the environment, make things fluent, ease the process for us. We want to set up a small business. You will not imagine the number of people that are lying per day to tell you this or that tax or this dues you need to pay. The youths are not being favored even from the very basic, from the very start of whatsoever they are trying to introduce, because they are overburdened by tax and other administrative procedures that are very lengthy and costly. So all of that, the state is always talking but not supporting us on the field. That is just one of the points.
Okay. You still have many more. But let me ask you this question. You're talking of creating an enabling environment, and it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, that you have many more opportunities now than there were 20, 30 years ago when you didn't have the information superhighway you all are exploiting today. And we have had reports on CRTV this week about youths who have become entrepreneurs and are going international, 5, 6, 7, 10 countries, and are moving out of Cameroon, which never happened before.
Let's not mix up things here.
Yes.
Those are isolated cases. If you want to take a deep look into those youth that are going international, as you say, they had a certain backing. We are taking an example of an average Cameroonian youth with very little or no backing, or from a very humble background. It's not that easy to emerge. Go and talk with these persons that are making it. Let them tell you the gospel truth. You realize that no, there was some support coming from
I know 3 or 4 youths. The one that has done, has created a gadget, or has invented a gadget for car security. He started with an ordinary background like you. It's his intelligence. The one that went in for the drone, the ones that, so many of them, a good number of them.
That's true. We should not totally back out the idea that is as if to say there is
you are not creative
to survive. We cannot survive totally. No, there are those who are. But it is not all that have that grace, that privilege.
Okay.
Better say, that patient to be able to go through all the hurdles to make it no matter what.
Okay.
Yes.
Tatiana, he talked about creating the enabling environment, but incentives as well for youth to be able to blossom. And there is this desire in Cameroon for many youths who think that the only way out is to get into the public service. I remember one of our former prime ministers said, if you want to be rich, don't get into the public service. But it looks like the way out for many youths today.
I think that today it will actually be a lot of youths have the perception instead that if you want to be rich, get into the public service, because there's opportunity. They feel like there's opportunities for what we call gombos and advantage and all of that. I think that for youth, we don't only plan, our goal is not just to integrate the public service. We want to be independent elsewhere. Personally, I would not like to integrate a public service. I'd like to, I studied language. I have a master's degree in linguistics. So I'd like to probably set up a linguistic center somewhere of my own. But then when we notice that your age, when you start looking at your age and you see that your plans or your objectives are being realized slower than your age, you start to have plan B. And sometimes we feel like if I could integrate the public service there, I could have an assurance of at least a couple of 100,000 in salary per month. And even though we try to have that as a plan B, we still have our plan A that we work on with all our efforts. Now, as far as incentives from the government is concerned, we were talking about youth who have thrived using social media and all of that. I think that those youths have had the opportunity to have a certain training, because you can't develop a drone without having quality training in that domain. How many youths are able to? How many exactly? Yeah. How many youths are able to afford that training? Or even if the government has scholarships that are offered or grants that are given out to students, how many youths have access to this information? A lot of times when we hear in ministries that there are scholarships, we just realize that they are our classmates who are traveling to China and all of that. But I've never heard where very few times we see posts of opportunities, scholarships for training and all of that, as it should be.
Even though you are living in the information superhighway era. Now, Dinah, they have talked about in the enabling environment and incentives, but from every indication, it needs much more than just incentives. You have to have the creative mind to be able to dare as well and have something.
Yeah, that's true. I'll first of all start with the lack of information. Let me start from that point before I go to other effects. Yeah, lack of information. As Tatiana rightly said, the information is not really available. Yeah, there are opportunities out there that we, the youths, cannot really lay hands on. So, if taking into account now the other aspects, I would say there is lack of training centers. Yes, training centers. For those that maybe had the opportunity to create an app and to go international, maybe they had a particular training. And if you want to go deep into their educational background, they probably studied out of the country or had somebody out of the country that could support them in one way or the other. So the government has to open more of training centers. We realize that, for example, you see in a polytechnic or maybe, for example, technical schools, you see somebody studying physics and at the same time doing history. They are not compatible because you need to be an expert in your field. If you are an expert in your field, when you grow up and you reach a certain level, no matter if the government cannot assist you or what, you have the means to develop other opportunities for yourself. So we should not only look at the government, but we should equally look at the lack of the centers, training centers. The government should try to open up.
In other words, the professionalization of education is not real.
Yeah,
it's not touching. Yeah, it's not touching.
Entrepreneurship is not encouraged.
Okay,
it's not encouraged.
There is this accusation which they label you today. You're very disrespectful. You're very arrogant vis-a-vis the elderly, and so on and so forth. How would you react to that?
I will say those accusations are true. Yeah, they're true because youth nowadays are very, very, very idle. When you're idle, you seek for other opportunities that could comfort you. By so doing, you have to turn to the internet, copy other people's behavior. Maybe you lose your own values because you want to copy. When you copy from outside, from out of the country, obviously you should be arrogant. So
now, people would have thought that you should be more open, more informed, more daring because of the smartphones you have today. These things were absent about 2 decades ago, but that is bringing a negative impact on you than the positive impact.
That's true. It's bringing negative impact and it's also bringing positive impact. Now, most of us, the youths today, started using a smartphone without basic knowledge in computer or without basic training in how to go about the information highway. What happens then if you give a person a car who has never learned to drive before? They probably run into walls and all of that. So I think that is the same problem here. But what we, the youth, have to do on our own is to educate ourselves. No one is going to come and organize a class or a course on how to use a smartphone. I think that there is a challenge that we as youths have today to be able to know what the right way to use the internet is. A lot of people have used the internet to research and even admissions, to get fundings, to get a lot of things that are available on the internet. But at the same time, we also use the internet socially to make friends, to find a husband, to find a boyfriend and all of that. And it has its negative impact, but at the same time, it's positive to us. And now, how many youths I was reading on the internet a couple of days, the percentage of internautes in Cameroon compared to the population is under 2%.
Under 2%?
That, yes, under 2%. That means that we see that a lot of youth have phones. Even a primary school child has a smartphone, but still the amount of people that are able to connect to the internet are not enough. But then we need to sensitize ourselves now on what the internet, how the internet can help us economically, how the internet can bring us to
bring more positive
independence.
Impact. Yeah.
Yes,
now,
independence.
You're living in a different world. As soon as you bury your head in your phone, you might find yourself in Australia. I may be talking with somebody on the streets in Australia. Now, the elderly are accusing you people of drug abuse, of cyber criminality, because you are smart, not only in picking out the positive things, but also the negative. And it's often said that the negatives entice more than the positive. And so, what do you think the youth can do to be reassuring and to say, you can give it to us, we will take care?
Now, those accusations, by the way, yes, it is founded. Those are founded accusations, but not to 100%. It's not like it's every youth who has access to this smartphone that is beginning to see things there and behave funny. First and foremostly, you know, the blame should not be totally shifted to the youth. Our parents have their own part of the blame too. You know, as soon as, by the way, when you offer those smartphones to your child, that is still very tender. Maybe because they just passed GCE to get to into university, or they pass O-level to get into advanced level, you want to impress them, you go and get a smartphone, then you just give, without telling this child that this phone like this opens you both to the good, the bad, and the... So, it's like this, it's like that. You school the child, and school the child very well, because given that the society is really terrible today, the manner at which you need to school the child needs to be a bit more serious than it were the case before. But our parents doing that, no. They themselves, some of them too, are beginning to embrace those smartphone and getting into the social media thing. At one point, everybody tends to be very serious on the phone that we forget our responsibility towards each other. At times, too, some of our parents are too busy with the smart things that they tend to forget to talk to their children when it is necessary.
And when you see that, are they the ones who give you money to buy the type of dressing which you execute nowadays? Or you do that?
That's a very disturbing. Well, maybe if those who dress as such,
I'm not saying you look smart.
They can best answer that question. But now, if you're living with a child in the house, still yet I'm shifting part of this to the parents, because today I see even little children that are not even of the age of going to the market to buy dresses for themselves. Even they give them money, they cannot go to buy dresses. When I say a child of 10, 9, 8, already wearing some funny things, what comes to your mind? Do you think is that child went to the market and bought? No. It is the parent that are putting on, addressing the child as such. And so these children tend to grow up knowing that that is a good way, a good dressing code. That is how they were dressed to train. But now there are those of us that who grew up being taught how to dress well. But because at a certain moment we are caught up with these things, we have seen other things from over, we are beginning to embrace it. I myself have difficulties to align if it is the parents or it is the children themselves buying those dresses. But if it is the children
getting those dresses, sometimes they tell you that it's old-fashioned dressing. Allow us dress the way our own generation wants us to dress, Tatiana.
And they are making, you know, this issue of being fashion. They are giving the impression that being fashion means everything but for decency, of which that is not the case. They think being fashion means part of the breast needs to be out, the buttocks, what? No. Being fashion just simply means you add a new touch to what you previously were doing. Today, like the atogo. If you look at some of the atogo of today, it is looking more classic than they were some years back. That is fashion. It looks more shiny, more well designed. That is fashion to me. Still with being responsible. Not that being fashion means we want to copy what we see the white people doing.
Now, I would like the ladies to say something on that.
Okay, I think that as we youths have the zeal to fit in to our generation, and I think our generation is marked by advancement in technology as well as in the fashion. Most of us have the pressure, feel pressured sometimes to buy the same shoes that A has got, to have the same makeup, to slay, as we say on social media. But we have to always call ourselves back to reality. Most of these things, yes, we see them on the internet, the information highway. We follow A, B artists, we follow stars who do this to sell their image and for entertainment. But then as we like it, we find ourselves being carried away. But what we need to do is to call ourselves back to reality again and realize that we are in a different social context. We're in a different environment. We're Africans. And in Africa, when they see you walking around in short shorts, you're definitely going to be attributed certain names that should probably don't fit with who your personality is. And sometimes we find ourselves doing funny things even to get the money to be able to afford such things. It's a problem with the youth, and not just the Cameroonian youth. I think is worldwide. So we need to know that if I make 30,000 a month, I can't forcefully afford something that someone who makes 500,000 a month can afford. So I need to live within my means. I need to live within my society and within my entourage to be able to be decent. Decency is it calls upon respect, and I think that we need to do better.
Diana?
I will still throw the blame on our parents. Yeah, you as a child. When you have a child that lives at the house indecently dressed, and you allow that child to go home, to go out, what do you think as a parent? So our parents are the ones that are pushing us to such dressing. It's true that comparison, we want to fit into the society. The world is rapidly changing. We want to fit into the society. But our parents don't really bring us to the right path. And some parents even do worse than the children. If a parent is putting on something short, what about the child? So we copy most at times what we see from the parents.
I'd like you to react now as a parent to the accusations they are leveling against parents.
Well, as a parent, I think we take part of the blame, not all the blame that they give to us. Because if you imagine today in our society, you ask yourself, are the parents, those of us the parents, are we living by example? If you go to the average society in Cameroon, the vices you find around gambling, drunkenness, and all of this, is it promoted by the youth or by the elderly? You go to booth, a father tells the son, go and validate my Chese. Is that father teaching the son the good example? When the father, every day he comes back from work, tells his son to go and buy him 2 bottles of beer, 3 bottles of 3 transport, is it a good example he's giving to the child? Look at our prisons today. When you imagine that former prime ministers, former secretary generals of the presidency have crowded the prisons in Cameroon, was it a good example they were giving to the youths? I don't think the blame in Cameroon falls on the youths. It falls on the elderly. And I asked myself, some time ago, the head of state asked Cameroonian youth to dare. It's a very good thing. It's a good impetus he's giving to the youth. But then, is there the accompanying support from the government? How do you expect a youth to dare? Okay, a youth wants to create a farm. Okay. You have felled down trees, you have felled down the forest. Where do you get the money to buy the high-yielding seeds? Where do you go to buy fertilizers? And are there those banks that will readily give you the loans to buy fertilizers?
We have some of those accompanying institutions, but I'd like us to call it quit here, because if we keep talking about it, we'll talk on end. Let's talk a little bit. We'll certainly come back next week when you people would have celebrated the day on the 11th of February. We'll come back on it, and maybe I should invite you to come and talk about what you saw. Let's have this report by Moki Edwin Kinzeka to move on to decentralization.
The very first request of the mayors is that the state should increase what it allocates to local councils from a mega 2% of the state budget to at least 10%. They agree that they do lack qualified human resources, but say they could tap from the state's rich human capital. They also think that mayors should not only be mere politicians without intellectual capacities, they should be academically sound and reside at home.
What the state expects from us elected officials is to go back and ensure that you meet up with the attributes given to a local elected official. You cannot abandon your city and there is total disorder and disarray. And you take your telephone and call people back home to give you information that I take very serious.
Both the experts and council officials want the council support fund FEICOM to be restructured. They are saying that resolutions should not be kept in drawers as they have seen before.
Okay, we are welcoming Mayor Anthony Diambong from the WUM Rural Council. You're welcome. You are youth. Unfortunately, we handled the other issue without you, but don't worry. We'll take on what you do more, that's decentralization. What did you learn at the conference, which you've never had before?
It was a wonderful conference. Like we've all been told, for the first time, mayors of this nation all converge on Yaoundé to talk about decentralization. It's a term that most of us are still getting into. The challenges were raised, proposals given, recommendations given. Most challenging is the 1974 law, which was put in place at that time, giving the powers to the state through the subdivisional officers to be able to manage state land, because as believed, all land belongs to the state. And it was compounded with the 1976 law, which now the subdivisional officers were at the same time municipal administrators. So they had these both powers, and so they were able to do it easily without any challenges. Today, we are talking of an official who has been elected by the people. And we all know that most of the senior subdivisional officers, once they are posted or appointed, they can stay for 2-3 years and they are gone. But the mayor is an elected official who stays there. Whether he has been re-elected or not, he stays in that municipality. And he is the planner of the town. We have the council development plans that the PNDP has worked with all the councils in the country, and we have council development plans, which means the mayor has to plan the town. And unfortunately, when you are there busy planning a piece of land, for example, for a market, for a school, for a hospital, for whatever other thing you want to do with that land, you get up, by the time you are getting to do that, you see, getting there, you see pillars already planted, because we are not part of that committee. That's one of the recommendations we actually made, which has to be taken into consideration. That's the new thing you learned there, which does not exist, right? We learned so many things. For example, I was vice president of the resource committee. The resource committee was not only talking about financing, it was talking about finances and human resources. And human resources, all the fingers were pointed at Sefamboya, where most of the councils are unable to train their staff. You apply. As you apply for the entrance, you have your workers that you send for their names. I want to tell you, for example, in Womb Council, I have 2 staffs who just left last year after 25 years that the Womb Council has never had a staff trained from CFAM. So we have those challenges. How do you work without those human resources? How do you produce results without human resources? We have to have a staff, a qualified staff. I remember
others would ask, why did you venture into being a mayor when you didn't have the capacity?
There is no school where they train mayors in Cameroon, and people have to get used to get on-the-job training, and that it further compounds it and makes it a problem when you get into a place where you don't have trained staff, because the technicians are supposed to be the ones who direct most
council
of the council workers who should be technicians trained. As I'm saying, we don't in my council for the first time we have had trained staff from CFAM. Most of them are untrained, and therefore you cannot actually be productive. The Union of Councils and Cities of Cameroon, UCCC, had asked government to train about 2,000 staff who can be sent directly to council to be able to handle most of the challenges.
Now, there's a lot of talk about means, and there are those who say even the little they give you, many people in many council areas, you don't see what is being done by the little which you receive.
I will not say no, I will not say yes. It depends on the individual.
Individual council area.
Individual council area. There's certain situations like that. I want to say that, first, like I just said, we don't have any school where they train mayors. The first thing is we have to have consciences. We have to have the patriotism. Most Cameroonians don't have the patriotism in developing this country. Once you don't have the patriotism, then you'll be forced to have such situations. We are supposed to have, because if you don't manage 100,000 francs, it's not a billion you'll be able to manage. Start from the little that has been given to you, manage it well, and when the more comes, you'll be able to manage to...
I like to hear that. But did you take any commitment within any time frame for something to happen, given the conference that was held in Yaoundé?
We didn't take... in fact, the proposals that we made and recommendations, it's just half of that is implemented. I'm telling you, Cameroon will become a small haven in the next few years. But the fear is, will this actually get to the end? Because there are certain people, as I said, because of this idea of patriotism, who can take and keep such documents in their drawers, and it stays there for the next many years. If part or half of it is implemented, there are so many things that the population, that the head of state keeps talking about, that they have shown interest in administration, in developing our country. Let us give them the opportunity, and that opportunity can only be given through mayors. And if this is implemented, I bet you many things will change in this country.
Now, you just talked there about the commitment and the patriotic spirit. How did you look at this aspect of your responsibilities, as when you have to have resources coming in from a number of ministries? Because if it were to come from your ministry alone, ministry under which the councils fall, that's the Ministry of Decentralization alone, that would maybe look more feasible. But when it has to come from the Ministry of Public Health, for example, Ministry of Secondary Education, Basic Education, and so on and so forth, does that not further compound the problem of resources which we are talking about?
That is exactly one of the things that we were resolving on. I want to give you an example. I want to salute the initiative of the ministry, newly created Ministry of Decentralization. What they did this year is people misunderstood what happened. Each council was put at their disposal an amount, it was not liquid cash. 100 million francs was given to each council of this nation. And you had, what were you to do as a mayor? You were supposed to prepare mature projects of what that 100 million francs. A team came out, that was sometime in November, to come and get these projects. You prepare projects worth 100 million francs and give, and they take and insert them in the 2019 budget. That's what happened. That is the same appeal we're making to the other ministries. I want to say that we have about 44 competencies which have been devolved to councils, but most of these ones are not yet functional. I take an example, basic education. Basic education has what we call paquet minimum, which they give to the mayors, and the mayors have the latitude to sit with the inspector and decide what are we going to buy for this primary school year which is going to begin. They decide. We have a public works which gives 27 million for the past year. This year is 27.77 million. they give the mayor. But that one in particular has some small strings, because the divisional delegate has to impose, he must be part and parcel of it to see what to do and so on. In some places, some people even impose that they should be the one to decide the roads. The other ministry, our appeal was that a basic education, which you just quoted, held, that you just quoted. If you have a budget, for example, you might want to build a hospital. The needs of that community might not be a hospital. Basic education might want to be classrooms. We might need benches. So our proposal or our recommendation was that let them say, okay, like this, the Ministry of Decentralization did, this is 10 million francs that we want to carry out projects in your municipality. Propose which projects we are going to carry out, because the mayor is what we call the judge of opportunity, which means that what? He knows best what his people need. And when they put it at our disposal as such, we'll be able to forward to them the project that will be carried out with using that 10 million francs. And that will solve a lot of problems. Then at times you just sit and a project is initiated from Yaoundé and a contractor comes to show you papers that have been asked to come and carry out this project in your municipality. It's so challenging to us.
Okay. When you listen to him speak, and you come from different council areas, what has been the impact of your council in your area?
I'll hasten to say very little impact. For instance, I come from a Mojok subdivision, and over the years, for the past over 20 years that council was created, I've not seen any impact. I've not seen any concrete realization that the council has done. And when you meet the mayor, he tells you that we don't have the means. And truly, when you look around the subdivision, you don't see how they could generate funds. The market, the market is not there. Okay. I went sometime to Oku. I asked the mayor of Oku. I've gone through around town. I don't find any income generating activities. How do you generate income for your council? He says it depends solely on the Kilo Mountain forest, the honey that comes from there, and perhaps from subvention that comes from the state. How do you expect councils to run that
Joe,
kind of
I just want to say something to as regards to what he has said.
Yes.
One of the challenges of municipalities today is they lack low participation of citizens in council management. Let me give you an example of what I did. When I took over as mayor, the revenue of Womb Council, local revenue, because that is what has to
alternative sources of income.
Local revenue. Local revenue of Womb Council was between 12 million and 15 million. Today, before this problem, Anglophone problem started, we were getting to about 40 million francs local revenue collection. Why?
It was coming from where?
That is what I want to say. Why did it just skyrocket? It skyrocketed because everybody was implemented or implicated in the management of the council. What do I mean by this? During all council sessions that we hold in one municipality today, we involve all the socio-professional groups. That's by Amselams, their president is invited, hairdressers, barbers, carpenters, builders, and you name all the rest. All their presidents are invited in the council, all the political parties, because once you're elected as a mayor, you are not a mayor for a political party, you are a mayor for the municipality. So we invite even all the other political parties to be part of the budget session. And during the budget session, we give them even, the law does not permit that, but we exceptionally, because I want to give you an example. If the law says when you are receiving a job, 3 people should be involved. If you put 3 plus 2, it's an added advantage. The law does not accept that, but we invite and give them even the opportunity to speak. And when they speak, the councillors now take the final decision on what has to be done. And as such, when they are going out...
It means that most of those little professional groups, you have organized them into cartels. Into
cartels, what?
Or little unions or professional groups.
They have their union, which are existing. And so when they go out, when you want to talk about the tax, because most of local collection comes from taxes. And when you go out, when you want to...
In those days, it used to be the poll tax.
The poll tax. Today, we don't have the poll tax. So most of the revenue comes from advertisement, market tolls, and so on. When you go with the market toll...
What you call the Jangali.
Jangali and so on.
For those of you in the north.
Yeah.
So okay. Diana, rather, what has been the impact of your council in your area? I know there used to be council scholarships and so on and so forth. Is it visible?
Not at all, not at all, not at all. Maybe it could be as a result of low participation of citizens, as Mayor rightly said. The citizens, they don't really contribute to the growth of our country, if I can say so.
Or council area?
Yeah, council area. For example, I'll use the issue of dirt or dust bins. You will see somebody eating in a taxi and just flings the thing out of the window. It's not proper. The development of our country lies on each and everyone's shoulder. As a citizen, you know, I should not do this, I should not do this. Don't only depend on the government or point fingers at the municipal council. Authorities. Okay. Or we should equally take the burden to try to develop our
cleanliness is a collective responsibility. Now, Franklin, what has been the impact of your local council in your area? Elvis, I'll come to you shortly.
Well, given that for about 5 years now, I've been residing in a council area that is other than where my region of origin.
Yeah, you could talk about where you are now.
Okay, it will be difficult to assess that because maybe the council may be giving priority to the inhabitants, the real people of that place.
No, you must have an impact. But in Yaoundé, I have an impact in my own area.
Well, nevertheless, you know, this, first of all, things are not really done in total transparency. And so for that reason, we don't even get information if such things exist, any sort of benefit to inhabitants of that place.
Diana was talking about garbage collection, light, water supply, and all the routes into the neighborhoods and so on. You don't find that?
No. As with regard to that, I will say the SWA Council, that's where we are, has been doing her best. I will say so because each year they do some small grading, some maintenance of the road. Okay, but as concerning garbage collection, it's still a daunting task. Okay. But equally, just to add one more thing, you know, this garbage, when we are throwing things anyhow, we make the council to spend a lot in collecting garbage, of which if we could manage our waste very well, those spend little on collecting garbage so that they can spend the money.
It's a clarion call to everybody, civic responsibility. Elvis?
Yes, Joe, we have had quite a good number of reactions, but I've just grouped the ones that concern us more importantly, and that summarizes the aspirations of many subscribers. So let's take this one from Prince Mutapena Obese Mudika, who says there are many, there are no parenting skills to stop drugs, prostitution, etc. However, parents and guardians can foster a close and trusting relationship with their kids from an early age, support and encourage positive behavior. And on decentralization, the government should stop steering the goat while keeping the rope. Decentralization means autonomy and not some kind of camouflage. The government should raise the 100 million francs to 100 billion francs for each council and put in place an effective check and balance.
I see the mayor smile
to mitigate corruption from some corrupt mayors. And Paco Paxson says the rate at which drugs and prostitution has embraced today's youth has gone so viral with globalization. Therefore, curbing it goes beyond parenting ability as well as what takes place in schools. It's everyone's concern, including the media. Okay. And as per decentralization, it's workable. Why not? It's all about the will of the power in place and the ones to relinquish some of their excesses to local.
All right. Okay. I would like to stop you there, and I got that that saying from I think the first contributor who said the government should stop selling the good and holding the rope. Okay, thank you very much for being with us. Our time is up, Mr. Mayor. We could come back on this some other time.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, our time is up, so we'll have to call it quit on the program this midday. Have a nice day and stay with CRTV. If you can, Tam Tam Weekend is coming up shortly, and we'll be with you next week. Good day.